Hey, let's sit down and compromise. Let's compromise this thing out. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Sometimes we compromise to keep the peace. Sometimes we compromise to accept something that's better than nothing, right? Like asking a girl out on a date years ago. You give her a call, you ask her out, and she says, no, absolutely not. But here's what I will do. I'll let you say hi to me once a week, and I'll respond by saying hello. But just once a week, and never call me again. That's the deal. That's the compromise. And you think about it for like a second, you say, sure thing. Awesome. People actually get to see me say a word to you and you respond? I'll take that any day of the week. What a great compromise. Also, lack of discipline and commitment spurs on compromise. Two big ones that I notice parents use. Your teenage kids could be drinking too much. And what do you say? Well, at least they're not doing drugs. So you just let it slide. Another one might be your 18-year-old is having sex. And then you say, well, at least he or she is not gay. At least that much. And you let it slide. You let it slide like 9 kids on a toboggan. Years ago, going down that steep hill, you slide down as long as possible. You know, the toboggan gave me my first feel and touch of a female. Yeah, you're young, and I got to hold a girl because when you're on a toboggan, you crouch down and you get all close together, and then you get your arms and you wrap them around the one in front of you. And I'm thinking as a young lad, I'm thinking this is great. I want to go on a toboggan every day, even in the summertime. I get to do that? Is this legal? Yeah, it was, as a matter of fact. So I always have fond memories of the toboggan. Beautiful piece of wood curved in the front. So these are two common rationalization when it comes to drinking and sex that I have observed. But do compromise and rationalizing, does that carry any weight in God's sight? Can you be a serious Christian and do that type of thing, believing in Jesus and letting things in the Bible just slide? Can we compromise what the book, what the Bible clearly tells us? Well, the short answer is no. That's not going to work. That's a big no. The book says, put to death whatever in your nature is rooted in earth. Fornication, uncleanness, passion, evil desires, and that lust, which is idolatry. These are sins that provoke God's wrath. So if we compromise, what are we doing with the Bible? We're disrespecting and disarming its message. We're tampering. You're negating God's power and his powerful instructions and design. And that can't be a good thing. You're tampering. Like tampering with the thermostat in your house. Growing up as a kid, man, we couldn't touch that thing. It was in the living room. You couldn't touch it. Nope. You couldn't even look at it. That was only for Dad. I'm thinking if I touched it, I'd get electrocuted or something. Nowadays, kids, they feel they have free reign. They turn it to 60 in the summer, 80 in the winter. Hey, that's too expensive. Who can afford that? Especially when some of these people have these huge houses, like the board guy, no doubt. Huge houses with high ceilings, incredibly high ceilings. You can set off 4th of July bottle rockets in their living room. They're so high. And you got to heat that and cool it. That's some change there you're laying out every month. So let's take sex in our society. When you're young, most of us, we're pretty much like heat-seeking missiles. pleasure-seeking missiles. And when we hit our target, there's an explosion of some kind. And not for the good. Because there's always some kind of spiritual, mental, physical, and or emotional negative consequence. And why do two unmarried people have sex? Well, there's a bunch of reasons. I don't want to downplay sex, but sex is always wrapped up in a commitment in marriage between a man and a woman according to God's rules. Now, if you're not a Christian, you can throw all that out the window and pay a price later, no doubt. That's your option, and that's my opinion. Yeah. So the music is full of sex all the time. So are the movies, the TV. We all know that. Like the James Bond movie. And nowadays, they should have a sequel, Jane Bond. So instead of James having 20 women a show, you would have Jane Bond having 20 guys a show. Because in today's society, the women, I believe, are just as bad, if not worse, than the guys. That doesn't sound right to me. So why do we have sex? Well, it can be for fun. It could be for love. It could be to build up one's ego. Sometimes it's an emotional release, releases anxiety and tension. And some for strictly lustful purposes. And some people are listening and hearing lustful purposes as the reason, and they're saying to themselves, well, yeah, duh, no kidding. But come on, man, that's the way of the world. Are we taking God and his design seriously or not as Christians? Do we continue to brag about our sexual escapades? Do we simply brag like the rich guy about his materialistic things while he has no family, wife, or kids, or friends? Do we simply satisfy our sexual urges for the sheer pleasure of it? The book says, do not take pleasure in a moment that brings on poverty redoubled. Nothing wrong with sex, as I said, but God tells us that it must be wrapped in that commitment within a marriage between a man and a woman. And again, if you're Christian, you got to take that seriously. You just can't let it slide. You know, sex is not designed just for the triumph or conquest over another human being. Sex before marriage is a sin for all of us, a big time sin. I always connect fornication and homosexuality. It's so easy to throw stones at homosexuals because that, as we know, is a sin. Well, look in the mirror. What are you doing? You're sinning too. We're all sinners. The trick is to turn that tide, man. Turn it around. Anyway, the book says, as for lewd conduct or promiscuousness, I didn't say that word right. As for lewd conduct or promiscuousness, there you go. Yeah, that's how you say it. Or lust of any sort, let them not even be mentioned among you. Your holiness forbids this, nor should there be any obscene, silly, or suggestive talk. All this is out of place. So that also means no more scummy, slutty party jokes. Now, oh, did you hear the one about blah, 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 blah? No, I didn't. But I did hear the one about that if you tell a ton of seemingly harmless, dirty jokes just for laughs, you eventually end up crying. The book says, not even for one sin will you go unpunished. So if we are humble and understand we are taught to deny our human nature, and yes, our sexual urges, some more than others, then we can abstain. We can't stay away from sex without spiritual help. You need that spiritual help. Otherwise, it's next to impossible. Again, especially when you're younger. And evidently when you're older now with these ridiculous pills, I don't even want to get into that. That seems obscene to me and so against human nature. It's by design our libido and our sex urges dissipate and dissolve over the years. Let it go. Maybe there's more important things to do. You ever think of that? dunce? I'm calling myself a dunce. You know, when I blab to you guys, I blab to myself, so I didn't really call you a dunce. Just me, reminding me how duncey I could be. The book says, my point is that although there are dunces out there, don't get me wrong. The book says, my point is that you should live in accord with the Spirit, and you will not yield to the cravings of the flesh. You need that Spirit within. You know, we're three parts, just like the Trinity, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. We're three parts: the Spirit, the soul, and the body. And the Spirit is supposed to dictate and control the soul and the body. Yeah. So you can fight against these cravings, and just not sexual cravings, by the way. There's all kinds of cravings, as we know. Cravings, cigarettes, chocolate, and dessert. I love people talking about chocolates. Chocolates, like I have my chocolates. And they say, oh, they can't stop. Do you want to stop? I'm not sure. I mean, dude or dudess. You're blowing up like a balloon. You need to stop. You need to hear some solutions to your problem here. The only solution they come back with is, well, what I do is I break every mirror in the house. Yeah, that's my solution. Nah, you got to do better than that. So we never stop trying to break these cravings, whatever they are, especially with sex. You can absolutely, don't think it's impossible, you can absolutely decrease and stop entirely if you really want to. I mean, and people do. I mean, people still remain virgins. I mean, there are virgins out there, and if you're a virgin, I'd love to have you call me and let us know what your strategy was and how you handled not having sex until marriage or forever in some cases. Yeah, I'd like to talk to the virgins. That's like a dirty word or something. The more virgins, the better. I wonder if virginity will ever become the norm of society. I doubt it, because the economy won't let it. Because as we know, sex sells. Sex sells everything. Shampoo, cars, refrigerators, beer. And in those commercials, you always have very good-looking young people, always smiling and laughing and hugging all the time. How come you never see two 70-year-olds smiling and laughing and hugging and kissing? Why don't they do that? Why do they have to be in their 20s? Hey, we got a call. Who's this?
It's Jim. How you doing this morning?
Hi, Jim. What's up?
Hey, just a quick question for you. Do you have any children?
Yes.
When they misbehave, do you stone them to death?
No.
Then why do you compromise on the book that way? Because it clearly tells us that we must do that. Now,
It clearly tells us that in the Old Testament under the Old Covenant. That was for a particular time. Now it's different.
We can certainly move to the New Covenant when gentle Jesus, meek and mild, came to walk with us. He gave us lots of edicts as well, and stood by not even a dot or tittle of his Father's word should be changed when his Father's word told us to, let's say, completely wipe out the Lamanites right after the Ten Commandments.
Well, things change. There was violence back then, a lot more than now. But that was the course of the day.
Right. You're absolutely right. Things do change. The condition of humanity changed.
Now, you said your name was Thomas, right? You said your name was Thomas, right? Thomas. Was it Tom? Jim. I'm sorry, Jim. Jim, I got to say this. I was thinking about this, and I like you, and I respect you. But to be honest with you, you know who you remind me of? And this
Who do I remind you of?
And this is by no means your fault whatsoever. Your voice, like I said from the beginning, is like a voice on a documentary. And the way you present that voice of yours, which is amazing, it makes me take you on face value that what you're saying is truthful. Because of that authoritarian voice of yours, it's awesome. It's a gift, I think, your voice.
In a way, I'm happy about that.
Let me finish. But I made a mistake, and you may take offense at this or you may not. But I made a mistake in right off the bat succumbing to that voice and believing what you say to be truthful and expecting you to talk truthful. But now I see you after talking to you. Honestly, and I'm an honest guy, I got to say this. I honestly see you as a wolf in sheep's clothing because I hear the voice. I want to believe you, but some of the things you said, man, are totally against God and the Bible. So now I have to take you with a grain of salt. Now, did I offend you with that or?
No, you're okay. Please always take me as a grain of salt in everything I say. Not only do I invite, but I urge you to look up and fact check.
Okay.
I studied theology for about 9 years, and where I come from is not a place of ignorance; it's a place of fact.
Oh, I believe that 100%.
So we talk about compromise in the Bible. Christians are the greatest of compromisers. We look at the Word of the Bible, and as Christians, we're a la carte Christians. We pick and choose what's good for us and forget what is the rest.
Many people do, correct.
We think that if we live the good life and live according to the book, we're going to make our way to heaven. And that's a great way to think. That's a way that we can think we affect ourselves in our afterlife and our life here today. But in the reality of the book, God tells us.
What? Go on. Hey, call back. That was an accident. Call back, Jim. All right? And we'll continue that conversation. Okay, we got another call. Who's that? Call back today. Right away.
Hey, this is Gerard.
Hey, Gerard, what's up?
Hey, I just turned into your show. I'm on the way to work. And I just wanted to say that Tom is totally taking the Bible out of context.
Wasn't that Jim? Yeah, it was Jim. Go ahead.
Jim, Tom, I don't know. The guy that had all the years of theology doesn't understand the Bible.
Okay.
He's talking about a time period when God had direct communication with the Israelites, okay? That has nothing to do with the new covenant that Jesus brought. And Jesus was not kind and gentle. Jesus said, I did not come to bring peace, but a sword between people. And you can take that out of context, too. But what Jesus meant by that is he came to bring a dividing line between people who believe in him for salvation and those who don't, and that there would be conflict between them, that if you loved him, you would be hated by the world. And that's actually what you're experiencing right now. You can't take the stories of reclaiming the land of Canaan that, I shouldn't say reclaiming, but obtaining the land of Canaan that was the promised land of God to the biblical forefathers, and what they had to do to not have trouble in the future, which was wipe out the unbelievers, the people who worship satanic forces. That's basically what they were. The people who they wiped out worshipped Molech and Ashtaroth, all these different
Baal.
That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah, they threw their children into the fire. All these things that God abhorred, and this is why. And you know what? The Israelites didn't do it. And today you have conflict continues in the Middle East.
Well, we have to understand, reading the Bible, there's lots of changes that took place comparing the Old Testament to the New Testament, the Old Covenant to the New Covenant. Divorce was allowed back then, and Jesus made it very clear, no, except for lewd conduct, divorce is a no-no.
Absolutely. Those were different dispensations, but the words that he's talking about in the Old Testament are specifically for the Israelites for that time period.
Yes, for that time period.
It has nothing to do
and
with
Jim
the
knows
current
that.
day.
Jim should know that, being
because
a student.
If God meant that, he would have had the Israelites rise up and kill the Romans. He would have brought Jesus to do that, but he didn't. So just wanted to come in, and you can't take the Bible out of context. You have to look at how it is. And it's hard for a non-believer to read the Bible because they're not reading it through the Spirit. And when you do read it through the Spirit, you understand God's words, and then it comes to life.
Yes, if you want to read the Bible and make trouble and find arguments to attack, there's plenty. You can do that till the cows come home. But what good does it serve you and others?
when you do read the Bible as a Christian, you do understand the character and nature of God, and you start to see the things that God believes, and that God had love for everyone. But in the end, if you don't love Jesus, and if you don't accept him as your Savior and accept the free gift of grace, there's nothing God can do about you, because he's also, even though he loves you, he's a God of justice.
I think the bottom line is, like you said, if you want to read the Bible through the Spirit like we do, you'll talk like us. If you want to read it through the flesh and use your own reason and rationale, you'll talk more like Jim. Hey, I got to let you go,
Thank
Gerard.
you, sir.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Yep, bye, Rob.
Thanks for the backing, Gerard. Gerard's always there, backing, having my back, unlike the board guy. We got another call. Who's this?
Hey, Robert, how's it going?
Good. What's up?
You know who this is?
Yeah, Barry.
Yeah. Sexual sins are way too prevalent in today's society, or acceptable, such as, like you said, incest and even adultery. Adultery, there's countries today that they implement the death penalty for that. In some countries on the planet.
Yes.
To this day. So.
Yeah, I mean, they stone people. I think for working on the Sabbath, they even stoned somebody to death. Hey, that seems a little crazy to me too. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? There's plenty of that stuff.
Well, you think maybe adultery should be a misdemeanor criminal offense here in the United States?
It's more of a moral thing than a legal thing, I think. I mean, you got to deal with God sooner or later on this planet or the next life. So,
yeah.
And then if you got to wait to the next life, the repercussions are worse. The sooner you deal with something, the better. So I don't know. Who knows?
Gotta look into it more. All right. Have a safe day.
All right. Thank you. Got a call. Who's this?
So you want to talk about sex?
Yeah, but you get a little out of control sometimes. So be careful. I mean, go ahead.
Well, when I read Genesis, it's obvious to me that the author of Genesis was sexually repressed, just as guys are today. He's worried about his size. Now, why do you think that the story in Genesis, where Satan takes the form of a serpent?
All right, this is just ludicrous.
Well, why was it a serpent? Because a serpent or a snake is a metaphor for a penis.
I think you're projecting, Walt. I think you're taking it too far. Again, if you want to talk from the flesh as opposed to the spirit, you can come over with any insane argument or discussion. And this one I'm going to have to ignore. Do you have anything else?
Well, let me say one more thing.
Go ahead.
And when Eve heeded the words of the snake, the author of Genesis chastised her and cursed her by saying that only in pain will she bear children. So that was his way of punishing the woman. In other words, that was his way of...
well, punishments were involved for them sinning. What else is new?
I'm giving you a psychological analysis of Genesis is what I'm trying to do.
You're giving me a demented psychological analysis of Genesis is what you're trying to do.
I'm really, Gerard said you got to read between the lines or whatever. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to really analyze the Bible for you guys. You guys, as I've always said,
thank you for that, Walt.
You can be as brainwashed into that Bible as the Islamists are into the Quran.
But you can be just as brainwashed in a sick way, talking about size and the author of doing this and that and the other thing of Genesis, and which is Moses, of course.
Well,
you're taking Hollywood's perspective on everything and dementing the message. Got to let you go, Walt. See ya. Hey, this is what Don't Bring Up God's all about. We welcome all opinions from all persuasions. We can't run from it. We have to discuss it. I think we did that fairly well. Huh.